Right. Okay. So I'm gonna talk about the starting point of the process, no, for communication, for the development of your communications materials. Faye mentioned that it's for briefing creative agencies. Yes, if you have an agency, but most likely, diba, you're probably briefing the art guy in your team, maybe the freelancer from outside who's your friend. No? So whichever it is you're briefing, whether maliit na project or malaki, small or big project, the principles of what we'll be talking about, I think, will apply regardless. No, so quick question, Faye. I can't really look at my chat, but you know, pop quiz, guys. When you're asked after you give a briefing, when do you need this thing? When is your deadline? What's the usual answer? What's the usual answer? Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Correct. Correct, right? And the thing is, you know that it's a joke, right? It's a joke that the briefing, the material was needed yesterday. But I guess the point is, it's a half-meant joke that no one ever briefed their agency and said take their time, because you know why? Because when you brief, it's probably because something's already happened that created that need, right? So you don't have time to waste going back and forth. And because you don't have the time, you can't really risk doing the wrong thing and getting the person who's doing the materials or the team doing the materials to do the wrong thing, right? But sometimes it happens, okay? Um, and in terms of sometimes, let me tell you that in the almost 20 years that I've been in this business, with a briefing happening maybe once every 2 weeks, so that's maybe 500 times that I've been briefed, okay? Often, there is a miscommunication of objectives. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding of the brief between the people who took the brief and the people who actually gave the brief. The ideas that came up were off strat, they were totally off the mark, or even the ideas were okay, but they were done by another group already, so you can't use it, or it's not fit to your brand, it's off brand, no? Or it's ideas that have already been done before. Bottom line, there was a waste of time and a waste of effort and a lot of frustration. So what you expected to get was not what you got. No? The reality was far from the expectation. So my goal today is to give you some tips to make the most out of the creatives by starting the process of briefing right. Okay. So I'll be talking about tips, but I'll start off in context by giving whatever stories I can give without giving away confidential stuff, right? So this is basically what your creative agency or your freelancer or your team member doing your materials wants you to know before your briefing, but is probably too shy or too embarrassed to tell you. Okay, let's go. I need a new AVP. So you can change that last word. I need a new PowerPoint. I need a new flyer. I need a new commercial. I need a new campaign. I just need ideas. Okay. Uh, and they say that, and then it's followed by, so what do you recommend? Okay. When that happens, it's actually a big thing, because it's very hard for us to answer that. Right? I need a new AVP. So my next question would be, okay, what do I say? Right? And then you'll tell me what we want to say, pero it will be wasting time. Okay. We gotta understand that, okay, you need a new AVP, but the more important thing for us is why you feel the need for an AVP or whatever material. Because a briefing is for solving a challenge. It's not for producing a specific kind of requirement of the battle, right? This series of talks was actually triggered by that. No, it happened recently. Somebody asked us for a material, but then we were like, teka, we're going about this the wrong way, cart before the horse. You're telling us to give you a vehicle, but we don't know where you want the vehicle to go, right? So you have to tell us, okay, give us the problem, or figure out what is the problem that you're trying to solve. What are you facing now? Because when we know the challenge, we know where you want to go, we can think of the solution to get there. Okay? The solution typically could be the AVP that you're looking for, but it could be something else. No? It could be a new way, a new headline, a new tagline for you. Maybe it's a PowerPoint. Maybe it's a different thing altogether that no one from our side ever or your side thought of before we started. No? So we want to know what the problem is because that's really the reason for communications. No? Communications is really about creative problem solving. Now, if there's no problem to solve, let's say you just want to refresh your material because it looks dated, there's no challenge to overcome, then maybe you just save your money, right? Reprint, change the colors or something like that. However, if you believe that there are more things that are necessary to change in improving your current materials and or your current approach, then that implies that there's something that needs fixing and probably a problem that needs solving, right? So we can talk about this thing a little bit more because at the end, I'm going to give you a template that you can fill up so that it can clarify your instructions to the people doing your material, right? Next. 30 logos later. Okay, this is another story. Several years ago, and this is not yet for one of the foundations, but it just could as well be. We were working on a project for a corporate client, and they said we need to rebrand and because our original logo and original branding was 40 years ago, etc., etc. So we made logos, and it's 30 logos because it's multiple sets. It's like a family, right? So you can appreciate it. 30 logos later. We were on the verge of going to 45 logos because we couldn't get it. Couldn't get approval. And you know why? Because the client who was approving did not was the one who actually made the original logos, and he couldn't let go. Okay, so if we had known that, maybe we wouldn't have done the approaches that we did, which were quite far, and we wouldn't have said, that the original logo is too much like this or too much like that. We could have avoided all of that. But see, the thing is, we did not get honesty when we were briefed. So real solutions need real talk. We want to know talaga, okay? Honestly, we need honesty. Okay. Please give us the lay of the land. You need to trust us that we can do this, right? Even if we all know that trust is earned, you still need to give us something. Okay. We don't need to know company secrets, but we do need to have some context. In this particular case, the context was, wait, be careful with the logo. You have to give him what he wants because he's the guy who invented the original logo, right? Even if it's totally off and it's not fit with what's going on today because it's so 19 whatever, you still need to give us that so that we can work around it. No? So we need the relay of the land, the real background, the real story. So it's not just about who invented the logo. It could also be like, okay, merong personal politics dyan. Okay, there's or this guy has particular, issues, or this group is challenging us, whatever, right? Okay. We need to know the problems as you see them so that we don't bump into them. Okay. Related to this is we also need to know the criteria for judging. Sometimes clients don't really say the criteria for judging, but there will always be criteria for judging because there will always be people who will make these judgments calls. I like it or I don't like it, but we need to know what they will like or not like. We need to know what's important there for the decision makers. And then we need to know the budget or the lack of it so that we can make it work. So sure, you can tell us that we will adjust the budget or we will come up with a budget when we see the idea. But you also have to understand that an idea can be scaled up or down, or we can just totally change ideas because they won't work without money. So we need to know what we can work with. These are concrete parameters which we can be creative with and still be realistic in achieving that. Right. Next story. Okay. Sometimes, okay, don't raise your hand if you've ever done a brief tapos it had everything on it, like a pizza, uh, with everything on it, you know. Um, Sometimes there are briefs where the objective is, okay, I want to do this, and this. And sometimes it's as general as I want to be number one. I want to be the most preferred. I want to be the most loved. Yeah. Okay. The target market is I want everyone. And then the message is I want A, B, C, and D. Right. Um, that's a very, very difficult brief because that's an impossible brief, right? We need the people making that brief to make decisions. Okay, so a briefing requires prior decision making on the end of the client, and basically, what decisions do we need? Right, we need you to fill up that brief, and it has to be realistic. Um, for example, everybody wants to be number one. Everybody wants to be most loved. Everybody wants to be the most preferred. But it's not doable given your budget and time. So what's reasonable? You need to decide, right? You need to make these judgment calls because we cannot decide on a target market. Yes, you want everybody to be your target market, especially if, let's say, you're a foundation, right? And you want people to donate them. But then you can't reasonably hit the 110 million Filipinos, right? Not all the 110 million Filipinos can donate to you, right? Okay, so then you need to narrow it down. Which of the 110? And then, okay, now you realize that even if you remove the babies and you remove the oldies who are not on the internet, that's still a very sizable amount of people, right? Do you have the budget so that they will see it? No. Okay, you only have your social media, right? Then you narrow it down, narrow it out. So you need to make all of these different decisions so that we can figure it out properly, right? Message. Decide on your main message because, you know, if I throw or somebody throws and you're sitting there, right, and I have four balls, and I throw the four balls at you, how many will you catch? Probably one, maybe two, right? It's actually very impossible to catch multiple balls physically. And that's the same thing when it goes mentally, right? If you only have a certain number of time, minutes, seconds, a moment in a person scrolling through the internet on their social pages, you can't really give them multiple things. You can only have one thing or two things for them to watch, right? So we need you to be decisive and make these decisions prior. Next, okay, this is interesting because this happens a lot. We get a 250 slide deck talking about the organization, the history, all the different projects, all the different communications that they've done. We go through their research, we look at quantitative stuff, etc., etc. But this all happened before we get the briefing deck, right? And you know, even if we're nerds and we enjoy, but I personally enjoy this 150 slide briefing. Not everybody does, and not everybody actually can understand the numbers. So it can actually be a case of oversharing, leading to yung proverbial nosebleed, di ba? Information overload. So sharing everything won't make your briefing better. What we need during a briefing is a brief ink, kaya nga brief, short, not long ink. So brief us on the background, but you can save the history for the reading back in the office, right? So what are the most important things we need to know to start working? The rest is stuff that we can read after. Definitely we want to read it, right? And don't worry about it being kulang or not enough because that's the reason why I'm going to give you a template later. So whoever you work with, whether it's us, whether it's the guy in your team, they will want you to have answers to the questions we give later. So the briefing is a time to get a grasp of the problem, but also have time to ask the questions. The questions like, okay, what about this? Have you done something like this before? Why is this the objective not that? Why is this the message? So on. All right. So now, speaking of questions, sometimes when we get to the briefing, we ask a question and then we're answered with, I don't know, I'm still actually new here. Right? That's not a problem. We're all new. Even the people who are being briefed, especially actually, are new. So it's okay to not know. It's okay to send a newbie to do the briefing, but at the brief, the newbie should know enough, right? The newbie should have been briefed also by uh, the bosses of that person. Fresh perspectives are good. We want to be partners with you, so we will learn together. But at some point, we will ask you about everything. So, yeah, we don't need to know everything, but at least somebody on your team joining the briefing should know the things that we need to know. Now, we can help you with this thing because here's the thing that you need to do a screen cap on, right? Actually, we'll send you the file later, but if you want to take a screen cap, go take a screen cap of this. Okay, let me repeat. You can take a screen cap of this. Yeah. Okay, so let me move this off. Magic. Yeah. Okay, so there are 11 questions that we need you to answer. So this is the template, the questionnaire, right? Of the 11 questions that need to be answered for a briefing to be worth it, right? Okay. I'll go through them one by one, but we can go through them in more detail if you like at some point later. So the main goal, what do you want to achieve along with the metrics, the quants, and the quals? Now, basically, if it's about coming up with a creative material and there's a problem, we need to know where we're going. You need to know where we're supposed to go, right? And you need to know if you got there. So that's why you need metrics. That's why you need quants, numbers, and quals, or quals. Next, hurdles, right? We want to know what's holding you back. If you want to get somewhere, we want to know what you've tried in the past. And okay, so why didn't that work, right? I'll give you an example later. Next, audience. We want to know who we're talking to and what do we know about them, what do we know about their motivations, because these are the guys who we are going to bring to the goal, right? Now, specifically, what's our goal for them? What do we want them to do? And what's going on in their life that we can fit into so that we can kind of adjust. Next is what can trigger them. So that's our insight. The proposition or message is what we say to them. The deliverables is what we will produce, what kind of materials. The budget is what resources we have to move with. 10 is the timing, what milestones are we working with, when do you want to launch, when do you want the material out, and then the appendix would be all the relevant research, past campaigns, and 250 slider there. Right. Okay, here's the example. Okay. The PPCRV, or the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, spoke with us 2 years ago because they said that they had a voter education campaign that they wanted to run. Okay, so we're looking now at number one, the main goal. Right? The main goal is they want Filipino voters to use the values from the preamble of the Philippine Constitution as basis for their votes. Okay, now, have you ever seen the preamble of the Philippine Constitution? It's very wordy, it's very technical, it's long list, it's boring. It could even be considered corny. So that's a hurdle, right? You can't tell people to memorize the preamble of the Philippine Constitution unless maybe they're in law school, right? And the thing is, who do they want to do this? They wanted basically the new voters. So young idealistic voters, generally 18 to 25 years old, to do this, to remember the values. Are you crazy? Okay. So why did they want them to do this? Because they wanted people to vote with their principles instead of persons. Because the belief is in the Philippines, voting is very personalistic. We're gonna vote for people, not for principle. Right? Dapat both. You vote for the people with the principle, not just because this so and so family has been in business long enough, or you want to give it a change. You know, this family has been here forever. Let's replace them with the other family. So the audience problem here is that nothing will change if we keep voting the same way, right? So we need to change the way people think. Okay, so the inside, the packaging is actually the problem. No one's going to say that the values are wrong. Values are right, but the packaging is problem. Okay. The proposition is vote for the Philippines by voting with the principles in mind. And the deliverables is they said, all right, let's do this with social media. We'll do it to our parishes. We'll do education campaigns. We'll do it to our volunteers, right? So we also need you to national training, so video modules. So that's why our deliverables are like this. Budget. Okay, we only have this much money. Okay, all right, we can make that work. Okay. Timing. We've got 6 weeks. Okay. And appendix. Okay, these are the other campaigns that we did in the past. All right. So that said, we came up with a campaign with this key visual. So if you see it, iboboto ko Makapinas, and there are 16 values, right? And these 16 values were done in a visual which combined all of them, chopped up into social media posts, so you could just go in them one by one. They were also grouped into video modules. We did a panata, ang tawag sa panata, an oath video, and we even had a jingle, and people did dance videos and stuff like that. So Faye is going to take you through a case study for this, so you get the context of what happened here. I'm gonna go stop sharing.
Political dynasties have dominated the Philippine government for decades. In every election, most citizens vote for the popular and famous. With the same family names etched in each voter's minds, how do we raise people's standards to make a change? Introducing the Makapilipinas campaign. Based on the 1987 Philippine Constitution, the PPCRV's 16 good citizenship values were translated into Tagalog and packaged into a single-word campaign that can easily be understood by the population. The message being that the best persons to lead the country are the ones that possess all 16, the Makapilipinas. The themes were also used to modernize voters' education modules for volunteers. These were then promoted with an original anthem composition and an oath.
Siya ay makabatas.
Siya ay makatotoo. Siya ay may malinaw na pananaw para sa makabagong tumas.
It even got attention from the media. The campaign is still running, but so far, here are the numbers. And plenty of communities had their own versions to share.
Sa pagpinag-inarato, laging tatandaan, nakata sa kanya lahat ng katangian. Makapilipinas, 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 iboto ang Makapilipinas, Makapilipinas.
I am back. Oops, it went back to the start. Okay, let me jump slides. Okay. It may be daunting, no? Kasi 11 questions. You can actually, if you can't answer all 11, it's okay. But can you please get the 6 main answer? No? And then we can figure the rest of it out. Okay. What's the goal? Where do you want to go? What are the problems? Why haven't you been there? Why didn't you get there at all? Who are you talking to? What do we want them to do? All right. How much money? And then, or resources do you have? So it's not just about money. Do you have social media pages? Do you have how much following? Do you have a national network? Do you have influencers on board who can, post and repost for you? That can be part of this. And then timing. When do you want it done? The rest of this we will figure out and we will discuss with you. Same banana if it's your freelancer, right? Okay. Having said that, okay, so you could have a really good briefing, and it can get us to that ending. You can get to the objective, but it is not magic. It won't solve everything that you need. So just to temper your expectations about what we can do. Okay, a communication solution, which is what creative guys will do, cannot solve a product problem or a service problem or an organizational problem, right? So for example, you could have a great fundraising material, a great fundraising campaign, and then it gets bogged down by the end. No? So when they click on the thing, and then your procedure is very difficult, or your website is off. No? Have you ever clicked on ads online and they ended up in the wrong place? So sometimes it's basic things like that that don't work, that are problematic. So that's a problem. So communications implies people see it, hear it, feel it. So communications means something was sent, something was received, and if it's not received, then you didn't really communicate. Diba? You shout in the forest and nobody's there, then nobody heard you, then you didn't really communicate. Anong point nito? Basically, it's about having a media budget, having, if you don't have a media budget, at least a commitment of people to share and reshare and keep sharing, resharing, putting up the sticker, putting up the social media post, clicking on the hashtag, etc. Right? Which leads to the third one. An integrated solution requires the org's commitment, political will, and discipline. No? You may be putting out great material on your social media, but if it's not followed through by everybody else, or there are different messages which are put out and yours is just a little bit of that space, no one will see. So you need to have an organizational commitment, and this requires political will to actually get, okay, the president, the CEO, everybody, we're using the same hashtag, we're using the same color, we're not going to change this up, right? We need to be committed so that people will see it and people will notice it, right? So at the end of the day, your creative team is your partner in making your goals happen. So make sure that you set them up and you set yourself up for success. And it begins with that briefing. That's it from me. Thank you.